brown bus.
Here we are on our big green bus.
In Iowa. So you've got a little momentum here in New Hampshire. Is the Senate impeachment trial going to mess that up?
I will make sure it doesn't. And more importantly, I think the voters in these 4 early states, they get, what are you supposed to do? You have a constitutional duty. And that's what I will do. I'm sure we'll use technology and Skype into all 4 states. But I've got to...
The 2020
I don't know what else I'm going to do. I mean, we're just going to find a way to do it. And I have said this publicly, but I've also said it in leadership meetings. I'm in leadership in the Senate. I was the only presidential candidate in the room with Senator Schumer and others. And the few of us, I said, look, I'm not going to change anything. I think that we should have the trial that is the best. We should get the most witnesses we can, and the chips will fall where they may.
Do you think you're on track to peak at a better time here than, say, Pete Buttigieg?
I'm the one that can beat Donald Trump. I'm the one that has won in the middle of the country consistently in rural areas, in suburban areas, in areas Trump won, and with a fired-up Democratic base in the cities. We had the highest voter turnout when I led the ticket in the United States of America. I think that's something that we'd like to see at the top of our ticket.
As you've been making an electability pitch this whole time, it feels like you were certainly trying to blow a hole in what could have been his electability argument, though he hasn't necessarily run that many times.
Well, I think my case was that I have actually won, and he makes a case he could win, but when he ran statewide, he wasn't able to win. In fact, got defeated by a major margin.
On the debate stage, you guys were given a choice, apologize or give a gift. What do you make of the fact that the 2 women on the stage chose to apologize?
Sometimes what you do when it's the holiday season and you have friends you see or family members you see, it's a good time to talk about things, good and bad, and that's how you are able to work with people in your life and to love people in your life. And that's why I don't know if it was a fluke or not that Elizabeth and I did that, but I think one of the things that we're lacking right now in the White House is a president who never asked for forgiveness for anything. He's never humble. He literally was given $413 million over his life from his own dad, and that's how he built his good fortune, and that's why he's living in this nice house and everything else.
You're already a person in power. You're a U.S. Senator. If you win this election, you'll be president. As a powerful person, you're probably going to make a mistake along the way. How do you accept wrongdoing for your mistakes and move forward?
I think what you do is you explain things to people. I had a job where I ran a prosecutor's office, and sometimes we would have to make agreements, plea agreements. We'd have to do things. The evidence wasn't there. And I always thought the best approach was to explain it to the public. And it turned out to be right. You explain things, and as long as you explain things, people understand it. And I think that's what's really lacking in this president.
You were talking about states that elected 2 women simultaneously to serve in the Senate. Could your ticket be 2 women running for president and vice president?
I have never put any limits on who the vice president could be. I just think you want someone who can take over and take over strongly. I think you want someone that complements you, and that often means in your styles and the work you do and your expertise. But I think that the most important thing is someone that can take over.
We've heard some names from Joe Biden. He's thrown out a few names. Do you have any names of people?
No, I'm not going to throw out names. I just think it's more important that you look for the right person. And by the way, Minnesota is actually knows a little bit about electing good vice presidents. The joke in our state always was that when new moms bounce their babies on their knees, they say, one day you could grow up to be vice president. But I am ready to change that pattern.
Trying to break that mold.
Yeah.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.